thanks everyone for coming out tonight on a lovely rainy night in Firhill for our Meet the Board evening. The good news is we don't have any presentations or anything like that prepared, which we've done previously. We're going to open the floor as soon as we possibly can to all your questions, and hopefully you've got some good ones and not too difficult ones for us to answer. Apologies for the short notice of the Meet the Board evening. We were hoping that Donald McClyman would be able to join us, and we were holding out for his flight times. We booked the time and unfortunately his flights have changed. So he isn't here, so that's the reason that the Meet the Board was late, short notice, so apologies for that, but I'm sure the rest of us should be able to answer any questions that you have. There's teas and coffees at the back of the room, if anybody would like to get themselves one before we get going, if you haven't had the chance to already. I would propose that I pass the mic down the line and we all introduce ourselves to you, and then we can get going with your questions. The plan's to finish about 9 o'clock. Okay, so I'm Richard Beestall, I'm the chairman. I think I know most of the faces in the room, and it's good to see most of you smiling at the moment, so hopefully we'll still be there at the end of the evening. I'll go to my left and then to my right, and hopefully people will be able to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name's Jackie McInnes. I have just recently been appointed to the board to help with the finances. My background is that I am a qualified ACCA accountant. I have an MBA. I work at a local independent school, turnover about 25 million. I am Director of Finance there. I have just recently appointed, as I say, I've still to get my feet under the table and get stuck into nitty-gritty. My mantra will be value for money. I am aiming to look at controls and get stuck into all the finances and to be as transparent as possible, and I look forward to working with a fantastic board.
Thanks, Jackie. Alan McGraw, I'm one of the two fan rep directors. I think I've seen most of you before. 55 years Jags fan. Pleased to say I was at the last game we beat Celtic, so I'm looking to repeat that on Sunday. As well as my fan rep duties, I've also got a remit for looking after stadium and facilities, so that takes up quite a bit of my time, as you can imagine.
Ian Barraclough, Sporting Director, appointed in April, and looking forward to meet a lot more of you. I know I've spoken to one or two of you, but not enough, so looking to speak to you as much as possible.
Hi, Alistair Gray, fan rep director, similar to Alan. I'm a 55-year Jags fan, and I'm a jack of all trades.
Thank you, Alistair. I'm Grant Russell, also recently joined the board, officially announced yesterday, here to look after the brand, marketing and communications side of things at the club. Not a Thistle fan, although a disclaimer from the off, but see a huge opportunity here to really help the club grow on and off the pitch.
Thanks very much, Grant. Hi, evening everyone. My name's Elliot Gilmore. I've been on the board now for nearly 2 years. My main focus is for the academy, actually, so it's great to see some of our young talent actually getting some time on the pitch, and hope to see much more of that over the course of the next few years.
Thanks everyone. I think Craig has a roving mic Norman has a roving mic at the back of the room. So if somebody would like to get going with the first question. Oh, one down the front here.
There's a lot of unhappiness about the hospitality prices on training from last season, and it's gone much higher than people can afford the hospitality prices, and so there's a lot less footfall in the hospitality as a result, and there's no what we do on that. Thank you.
I think we've recognised that. I think there is an announcement coming out post the Celtic game about we're revising the hospitality offer. We got it wrong, so we're sorry. We were hoping to increase the revenues, but we put the prices up too much, so we recognise that and we're fixing it, and there's an announcement going to come out after the Celtic game. The team in hospitality has been really busy getting ready for the Celtic game, So we felt it wasn't fair to put this announcement out, because one of the things we're going to offer is that if you bought a hospitality ticket later in the season and paid a higher price, we'll offer to refund the difference to you. So we didn't want to open the phone lines to people asking for refunds when we're trying to sell Celtic tickets. So there's an announcement coming out to cover that. Yeah, we got that one wrong. The new price will be less than last season. Thank you, Alan. That's fan rep action.
Hi, my name's Stephen Andrews from the DSA. This is actually a question for myself. Now, we know that today we heard that the tickets for the Celtic game is sold out. Now, unfortunately, for a number of supporters that don't or haven't bought 2 tickets on the fan base over the last so many years, weren't allowed to actually buy tickets for this game. So, what can the club do to mitigate this happening again in the future?
It's difficult. It's really difficult. I think we have sold out now pretty much for the game on Sunday. I think all tickets are now gone. You have to be able to draw a line between giving access to as many fans as you possibly can, but also balancing the risk that could be posed by somebody who's not a Thistle fan getting in amongst the Thistle fans. And that's something that both the police and the security officer raised just as being a real concern. So we had to draw the line somewhere, and it was felt that season ticket holders and then those who had 2 fan base purchases was an appropriate way to do it. Have some people missed out? Yes, it's unfortunate, but unfortunately you can't please all of the people all the time on these things. So we've had to draw a line somewhere, and regrettably that's where we drew it.
Yeah, just to say on that, obviously people who pay cash or buy at the booth didn't have the 2 fan base histories, but we have the staff in the offices have been taking calls from people, and we've been trying to help them to show us a history with Partick Thistle. So we've had people email us in copies of Greaves receipts where they've bought the strip, or send us photographs with them in their strip, etc. And on that basis, we've sold them tickets. So we've tried as far as we can to help people who have contacted us. But I would say I've been at quite a few Celtic matches here when all around you are Celtic supporters, and it's a very, very uncomfortable environment to be in. So what we've done as best we can to mitigate, to reduce that, minimise that. We won't have solved it completely. There will be some will have sneaked through, but we've tried as best we can to try and mitigate that risk.
Just to touch on the point you made there about infiltration, with us being, I've been, as Jackie has been, season ticket holder since it was built, and I don't like moving out, but the logistics are we have to. So we make the John Lambie the main stand, Partick Thistle only. Last cup tie, we were surrounded by Celtic fans and Celtic stewards when we came into the ground, and they asked us if we were home or away fans, and we were led to believe from Jerry Britton at the time that it would be home fans only. If there's infiltration this time from Celtic fans, how will it be dealt with? Because we had a guy that never watched a part of the game and stood as though he was a sniper taking pot shots at the Thistle fans, and that can't happen at your home games. It just can't.
That's down to the security team. I think there will be more stewards present, as you'd imagine, for this game. There's going to be a significant police presence, so I think if anybody's aware of anything like that, I would speak to the nearest steward and make them aware that that's a problem. But one of the reasons for these fan-based controls is to try and prevent as best as we can. As Alan says, somebody somewhere is going to have sneaked in, but hopefully we've done our best to stop it. And if anybody's aware of something like that, then please go and speak to a steward.
I mean, there's a pre-ops meeting which happens before every game. That's tomorrow. So Celtic and Partick Thistle will be represented there, as will G4S and the police. and these things will be discussed about what is the tactics should that arise. I don't know what the answer will be because that'll be in discussions tomorrow, but certainly anyone who turns up with a Celtic scarf on, for instance, won't get through the turnstiles. If they're in the ground without any colours and they're sitting there quietly watching the match, probably nothing will happen. If they start to do what you say and take pot shots and have been in that environment, then hopefully the stewards will deal with that.
Celtic so the stewards that were in that stand the last time.
As far as I know, all the stewards tomorrow will be G4S on behalf of Partick Thistle.
Evening, lifelong Thistle fan. Just a few things, if I may. First of all, say Ian, it's good to see you looking so well after your nasty incident where you're fully recovered. Question for Grant: if you're not a Thistle fan, who do you support? What stand will you be in on Sunday?
We've got no concerns on that front, I'll give you that.
With regards to the Celtic game, do you guys have an estimate of the extra income that we're getting for having them in the Jackie Husbands stand? And can also say it's great to see new additions to the board as well. Fresh blood, very positive. Wish you all the best.
It's hard to see the extra income we will get from having Celtic in there. I think the initial comms that we shared at the time for the fan vote outlined exactly what the split was likely to be with the two options that were presented. With a sellout, our gate share is about 100,000. I think it's 60-40 Celtic and Thistle in terms of the split. So it was the other way around. I guess it's £20,000 that we might not have had if we hadn't sold out the Jackie Husband stand.
Hi, there's a lot of us who normally come to the Jackie Husband. As we say, we're getting moved over there. Every home game, we win the Aiken Suite. Now for the Celtic game, we're not. And so there's a big crowd of us who aren't going because that's our match day experience ruined. Because we always go there, we're in by 1 o'clock, say to 6 o'clock after the games. We can't do that against Celtic. And that's just ruined the whole match day experience for a lot of us. Why? Because we've given it over to hospitality.
I guess the decision was taken, perhaps something we should have spoken to more people about, but the decision was taken that we would make more revenue from hospitality than we would from the bar. If the bar was open all day, we would make more revenue from selling hospitality places. So that was the reasoning behind it. Perhaps we should have made that clear and discussed that with more individuals. So I'm sorry you feel like that, and I'm sorry that the match day experience has been ruined by that being the case, but that was the thinking behind it.
Yeah, just to add to that and just to remind people, we have given a commitment that the vote that we had, the fan consultation, was for this match only, and that we will come out at the end of the season to look at our strategy for allocation going forward should we get into a position where we're playing here more regularly in the Premier League.
And thanks for raising that concern. It's been noted and it's something that we'll think about in future.
Hi Richard, is it to ask how much, I don't know whether I missed it, but how much we actually made from the Celtic game overall?
I think maybe a better question to answer is how much has the cup run to this point been worth? And the answer is about 140,000 of profit that was unbudgeted as a result of getting this far. We'll make £100,000 from our share of the gate. The prize money for getting this far is £100,000, plus we get 30 grand because it's on the telly. So there's 130 of prize money against the 36,000 we had budgeted for being knocked out in the group stage. Now there are greatly increased security costs for having Celtic here. So I did some fact packet numbers earlier this week. I think it's 140,000 is what it's been worth to get to this point.
Sorry, to ask Elliot actually, we don't actually hear much about the youth system. Years ago I used to go to youth games and used to know basically on the 19s or 19s. But nowadays, it's very little. In fact, the guy Love, when he started playing this on the first team, I had no idea of him. Just wondering, can we get more kind of publicity and find out who these guys are really, more about them really?
Yeah, completely agree. I know Craig, we've had somebody in sort of just restarted some of the social media for the academy. Now is a particularly good time to do it. The under-17s are currently sitting top of the league. The under-19s are currently sitting top of the league. You know, we've got a lot of young, talented players that will hopefully make their way onto into the first team. That's all. You know, that's happened. I think like 3 or 4 players signed professional contracts actually this season. I think is it 7 apprentices we've got in now?
7, yeah.
Yeah, so there's 7 apprentices, either year 1 or year 2 apprentices that are currently with professional contracts. I think another big positive step that happened when Mark and Brian came on is that the under-18s at the time, you know, the number of them actually started training with the full squad as well. You know, it's quite a big transition to go from academy football into first team football, and I think that the guys have made a really good positive step forward in preparing them for that. But yeah, your point's really good. You know, I think my passion's academy. I could probably talk about that for the rest of the night if you want, if you were willing to listen. But I think the more that we can tell people about what's happening in some of the younger groups, the better. You know, because I think you know, as Thistle fans, we all like to produce our own. You know, I think that's something that we probably haven't done a massive amount of, albeit that I think we're a lot better than some other clubs. But yeah, your point's very well made actually, and I think we should do more of it. Yeah.
If you don't mind me just saying on the young lads, you know, I know players like Jamie Lowe, Mike Faulkner, Liam Rooney came through towards the end of last season. I think it's important that these lads are given plenty of time. You know, they've got potential, and that's what it is, it's potential. Now, the more they train with the first team group, the more they're integrated, then it's going to benefit them in the long run. But they're nowhere near, you know, the fully fledged players that they are. And if they dip in and dip out, then that's great. But they also need a games program at the age that they are. So 16, 17, 18, they're developing physically and they're developing as people as well. So, you know, you've got to really give them a proper games program, and you're talking 35, 40 games a season. Now, some of those players we're looking at moving out and giving them some first team experience and getting them on loan, whether that's through a co-cooperation that I've been talking with a lesser club, a lower league club, or they go out on loan. But for me, it's important to see those players develop, and at times these players outgrow the under-19 system, so it doesn't test them. So to get them playing men's football is so important. So for me, that's part of my role with Craig Dargo, with Mark, to discuss where the right place is, because it's not a case of just sending them out on loan and letting them fend for themselves. You know, it's got to be the right club. So there's been several meetings with different clubs that we think are the right places for them to develop. Do they play the similar sort of football to what we're trying to play with Mark? And don't forget, that's in the infancy. So, you know, it's not just a case of getting them out and we can get 100 quid for them, maybe somewhere 150 quid. It's not about that. With those youngsters, it's got to be thought through, and they've got to be put in the right place and then monitored and looked after and nurtured, and then when they come back, they're in a much stronger position. All right, so that's just to add something to what Elliot said there.
What's that again about the fans ticket? How would you any controversial decisions is made by the club? It gets there's always fans going criticising, so how would you on social media? So how would communicate better communication, and so that, you know, there's been quite a lot of that before the end of the season, and so thank you. Just wanted to know how you're going to communicate controversial decisions made by the club to fans. So thank you.
in terms of how we communicate anything, whether it is something maybe perceived to be controversial or a tricky subject, and we will endeavour to do so with the full transparency that a fan-owned club merits. I think you only need to look at our consultation around the Celtic Cup match, which is a difficult topic and an emotional topic for many people, and it's already been alluded to in this room with the Jackie husband stand. So what our ethos is, and will continue to be, is about that high level of transparency, really breaking down the level of decision making that's going into it, and where possible putting that back to the fans to be able to either communicate back to us or have an active role in it. So as I said, all about that transparency, deep detail, not skirting over the detail, really getting into it, and just making sure we persist with that approach.
Good evening, I'm Willie McLean. I came along here first in 1956, age 12, and for about 20 years there was no segregation other than Old Firm playing each other. You could change ends at half time, you could mingle with the opponents, the supporters, as if they were human beings the same as you were. Unfortunately that changed, and a generation came in who were more interested in winding up the opposition fans than they were in watching the game. Do any of the panel see a future where we might get rid of segregation again?
I think that would be great. I think it's unlikely, if I'm honest. I think I can just about remember some of that from maybe lesser games and lesser teams. It would be great, but I think given some of the stuff that goes on in social media and some of the casual culture that exists in all clubs, I think it's pretty unlikely, unfortunately.
I mean, it would be good to get there, definitely, back to there. I was here in the early 70s when you could walk from one end to the other at half time and cross over and speak to the opposition fans. And then they built a big metal fence there in the middle of the shed, remember? So you were segregated. And after that, I've been chased from that many away grounds, back to the bus or back to the train. So I don't see it going back to that, but the one hope we've got, I was at the match down at Glenafton pre-season. I was at the Edinburgh City match and the League Cup group stages. No segregation, no hassle. A really good evening and afternoon, so maybe there is a little bit of hope that we might get back there.
Just a way of aside, I stopped coming to games after segregation. I detested it so much. So I detested segregation so much I stopped coming, and I only came back to save the Jags when that was on the go in the 1990s.
Yeah.
But I would love Firhill to be a place where behaviour that would get you arrested out in the street would also get you arrested in here.
Yeah, so I was just a teenager when the segregation came in, and I learned to run fast, so I can still run pretty fast.
I realise it's obviously pretty early in this season, but there's obviously quite a lot of players out of contract, like summer 26, so I was just, oh, there you go. So I was just wondering if there's any kind of work being done around the extension of that. I realise it's early doors, but obviously come January they're free to look elsewhere, and there's obviously a lot of important players in the team who will be out of contract coming in, so I'm just kind of wondering what work's been done around that.
Yeah, I think it's an important part of my role, not only bringing in new players that have strengthened the squad, hopefully, and given us a new look, but also, there are certain players in the squad that have entered their last season with a contract, and quite rightly, we've got to engage early to show our interest that we want to keep those players. Now that becomes progressively more difficult with agents and players that obviously want to seek pastures new, but we've got to put a squad on the part that's strong enough and exciting enough for them to want to stay. They've got to see that there's a chance of potentially getting promoted to the Premiership and staying with the club and developing with the club. So players like Ben Stanway, for instance, one of our own, we want to nurture him, we want to see him through, but players like Ben, I know there's been interest in him from the summer, and nothing materialised on that front, so there's nothing to report, but it's important that we try and keep players like Ben that we want to see develop, and we are in a position, we've got to admit, that we can't keep hold of these players when they do well. You know, they will get cherry picked, and that's just the footballing nature. That's how it is. But we do our utmost to try and keep these types of players, and it's my role, and I have been speaking to agents, players, and there are several of the squad. I'm not going to name players, I'm not going to name individuals, but that's not right. But yeah, there are several that we're in communication with, and we want to make sure that they don't get to January where they're suddenly then free to talk to clubs or even sign pre-contract deals. So even though we know in this day and age they do speak to them on behalf of a third party, so it's increasingly more difficult, but hopefully, you know, we've got the right things in place, and you know, the right people in charge as well, looking after them on the pitch, that entices them to stay and extend the deals.
I'm just going to add a little bit to that and say I think it's important that we also recognise we have to operate within a budget. So we could quite easily put a contract offer in front of a player and say that we couldn't afford, that they would probably sign. So that's where Ian's real skill comes in, balancing that. Hey, you want to play for Partick Thistle because it's good for your career, but we've got to make sure we live within our means.
Yeah, that makes total sense. See, in terms of, obviously you spoke earlier about extra money from the Celtic game, is that helping with player budget, or is that plugging gaps?
I think we had made some commitments to cut some costs towards getting towards break even. It's allowed us to take a breath on some of those cost cuts and decide whether it's we need to do them right now, rather than spend more on in the playing budget. So we're keeping a watching brief on it. Probably reassess in January where we are in the league and how we've got on in the other competitions. And hey, you never know, we might win on Sunday, so that would help.
Thank you.
Big plans in Charlotte.
Anyone else got a question on chance? Just on obviously young players that coming through, I don't know if it's true, but did we get any money for James Penrice going leaving Hearts to Greece? And if we did, when that money filters through, will that then go into the playing budget? And likewise, any player who does leave Partick Thistle has got a sell-on clause or a development fee, will that then go straight into the player's budget and be ring fence for that, or will that just get absorbed into the club?
Bit of both is the short answer. So in James Penrice, first of all, yes, we'll get a share of training compensation, a share of his fee. So 5% of any transfer fee is then shared amongst the clubs that he spent his youth career with. So we don't know exactly how much he was sold by Hearts for, we know roughly, and we think we're going to get a sum of money for that, which is significant. It will help the budget for this year, so we allocated a little bit of budget for expected transfer income, because you get something every year, and it just gives us certainty around that income for this year. The way it works is that when transfer fees are paid, you get paid in line with how the other club pays for that player. So quite a lot of transfer deals are actually done in instalments. So it could be instalments over 3 years, and we'll get paid for James Penrice over 3 years if that's the case. In terms of, as I say, there's a degree of income in the budget for transfer sales and for solidarity payments, that kind of thing. Once we go above that, it will initially go into the overall budget, but if we see there's a surplus, then the first place we look to is to either improve the infrastructure or consider if we can put more on the pitch, because that's obviously long term going to earn us some income.
Anyone else got anything? Anyone else?
Hi there, I've been a fan for 55 years. I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask. First of all, Youth Academy. The method is ideal, getting players coming through and playing for the first team. Now, going back, way back when, before freedom of contract or whatever, young players came through in Scottish football and were sold on at a profit if they were any good, and it generated income. Now, recently, I think that has virtually disappeared. I mean, maybe going back 10, 15 years ago, Hamilton Academical sold players for $1 million, 1.5 million. That's not happening now. Even young Rangers and Celtic players are getting picked up for peanuts
to go and play in the Premier League in England. So what I would like to know is the strategy behind the Youth Academy, and exactly how is that going to move Partick Thistle forward and make them money, because it's obvious we desperately need money.
Great question. I'll answer the first part of that and then perhaps pass on to Ian. The generation of sort of compensation for youth academy players when they transfer between academies, I think the rules have changed on that quite a lot, and I think it's a legal thing. So there's legal directives around not restricting movement of amateur footballers between clubs. I don't necessarily agree with that, because it probably costs £3,000 to £4,000 per player per year. But we have to pay pitch lets, we have to pay a whole host of things, coaches and everything. So it costs about £3,000 or £4,000 a player each year to develop them. In my view, and it's only my view, if Celtic or Rangers come along and want one of our really good players, they should pay compensation for that. Now, ultimately they would, but we would only get the money for that when they sign a professional contract. So it's a little bit, I think for clubs like ourselves, where we are producing some really good players, we're not really immediately getting the just desserts, I guess, for the money and investment that we put into them. Now, I think in terms of the sort of second part of your question, what is the strategy? For me, the primary strategy is getting them into the first team. I think you don't really want to be selling your players out of the academy. What we really want to do is to try and build value in them. So if they get 10 appearances, 50 appearances, 100 appearances, a bit like Ben that Ian was mentioned before, their value increases exponentially. I think one of the things that we probably haven't done a lot in the last few years from a sort of revenue generation point of view is have a really good player trading model. We haven't really brought kids through and given them that game time, so we're not really building value in what we've invested in. I'm sure the board would echo this, and it's very much a personal point of view, but I think that's what our academy should be doing. It should be primarily producing players to the first team. They then build value, then at some point in time, if a bigger club comes along, we get proper money for them, not just compensation for the training that we've put into them. So that's something that we're very much working on. We did sell a player out of the academy to Everton last year, which you'll know about, which we did get some decent money from. Again, that was only because he signed a professional contract when he was 16. We've had one or two more. We had one that went down to Sheffield United and trialled this year. We've got another one potentially going out to Burnley next week. But again, you're kind of selling a bit early, if you know what I mean. In my opinion, I'd like to get them into the first team and get the value of them playing on the pitch, and then sell them for proper money later on. I don't know if you've got anything you want to add to that, Ian.
I think it's important that we try and get players in early, as young as possible. And you talk about this pathway, they've got to have somewhere that they can see that they've got a chance of going and playing. So someone making their debut like Jamie Lowe last year, 16 years of age, does that entice a younger player at the age of 14 to say, do I go there, or I've got a chance of going to Celtic or Rangers, for instance? I'd hope to think that they'd like to go to Partick Thistle, because I might get a chance in a couple of years' time, because they play young players, they give them a chance, they give them a pathway, and then that starts to snowball. And I think you've got to start somewhere, and I think the work that Elliot, Craig and the Academy are doing at the moment is fantastic work. I think there's some real quality in the younger age groups, but the reality is they will get cherry-picked at times, and if it's a case of going to Sheffield United or Burnley or Celtic or Rangers, ultimately we can't really stop them, and we can only get small money for them at that age. So we want to entice them to come here, sign for us, develop with us, get 50, 60, 70 games under their belt, first team games under their belt, and then they go with our blessing. And then players then see, well, that guy's been given a chance, that guy's been given a chance, and they've made great strides, and they're playing first team football far quicker. So it depends on the individuals that you're able to bring in, but I think once that development pathway starts showing, then I think you entice more and more coming through the door and better quality as well.
Hi guys, Partick Thistle fan, 67 years my sins. 1958 I think it was, yeah, first game. The question is this to Ian. Ian, we've got the boy Smith or Smythe from St Mirren Boars. I know you were a Northern Ireland manager. Did you recommend boy Smith? Or am I just imagining it?
Let me just tell you a little bit about the strategy for our to bring players in, and it's not down to one person. All right, someone's got to have a link with someone at some stage, somewhere along the line, or it's from a scout that we've got. And I was talking to the board today about the scouts that we've got in various areas of the UK. They're all volunteers. None of them get paid expenses, no expenses, but they all do a fantastic job for us at this moment in time. And if they flag a player up, it's my job, Lee Turnbull, the head of recruitment, Mark, Alex Ray, to potentially go and see them and develop them. So there's a lot that goes in between that, but generally that's what happens. Now, between myself, Mark, Lee Turnbull and Alex, we've got quite a few years of experience, and we've come across quite a few contacts in the game and maintain those contacts. And it could be a tip-off from somebody, it may be a phone call, that you're just having generally. It may be we go around trawling games and seeing what there might be out there, for instance. But with Oshin, when I was senior manager, he was in the under-21s, and my friendship with Stephen Robinson goes back a long way. I suppose with that one, I knew what we were bringing into the football club, but we won't bring a player into this football club without Mark Wilson giving it the go-ahead. And it's important that people realise that. It's not down to me saying we must sign him. It's not pressure put on Mark or Alex. It's with their agreement. And, it's my job, it's Lee's job to put players in front of them, generally 3 or 4 in one position. If we're looking for a fullback, for instance, there's 3 or 4 fullbacks. They've probably got varying attributes that they can go on, that they are, whether they're a defensive type, whether they're an attacking type, whether they're big, they're small, whether they can fit within our finances. A lot of things go into consideration, but not one person will come in here unless Mark Wilson has said, yeah, I'm happy with that signing. So I hope that's given you a bit of an outline as to where we...
Yes, thank you very much. Anyone else got anything they'd like to ask?
Hello, good evening. Just bear with me, it might take a minute. I'm going to move us away from the football subject back to kind of finances. I was here in, I think, November last year when we did the consultation on Tranche 2 investment. You presented quite a detailed sort of summary of where the club was at that point in time and where it was going to move through this season in particular. There's a couple of things that are conflicting in my mind. When you set that out, you very much said that the target was break even for this season. Wasn't being budgeted for cup runs, I don't think, at that point in time. There was quite a lot of challenge around non-playing staff appointments as well at that particular session. You mentioned earlier, if it weren't for this cup run, you might have been actually looking to cut staff, which seems a bit unusual considering you were promoting how many non-playing staff you were adding into the club at that point in time. Similarly, in terms of going back to the very first question the gentleman asked at the start, I think only about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I can't remember whose interview it was, but one of the board stated that commercial revenues were up through hospitality. You're now going to cut prices, I assume because something's not working. You wouldn't clearly cut prices if the revenue was up and the uptake was going well. Similarly, I think Richard, you said at that tranche 2 consultation that any additional monies would go into the playing budget. So from a layman's point of view, this season appears to have went pretty well. Let's assume that we're within budget for the playing side. We're ahead on cup run. I think attendances are reasonably healthy. You talked about budgeting for 3,500, I think, perhaps, at home games. Shirt sponsorships and all these other things that the board said they were kind of hamstrung with because these deals had been put in place before you were there, presumably are coming to an end. So it sounds to me like there's lots of opportunity actually, and that theoretically our numbers should be pretty healthy so far this season. And amongst all of that, and I did say bear with me because there's quite a lot there, I guess the question, and I'm kind of clinging on to have my scepticism about the board's performance over the last 2 years removed, with the hope that things are improving for us. I really welcome the appointment, particularly Jackie, because a finance director seems like it's something that was sorely missed, given we had to go and sell fan shares for £1 million to plug a gap. So, look, give me some hope, please. Tell me things are going well, or that some of the challenges I'm making here are wrong.
Not sure where to start with that, because there's lots of questions in there. We budgeted for break even this season, and that's still our ambition. We should be delivering that. Achieving that budget, that break even budget, involved cutting some staff numbers. Unfortunately, we took the difficult decision that if we wanted to break even, we'd have to cut some staff numbers. I would challenge the fact that there was lots and lots of staff recruitment. I think there are 7 full-time equivalent members of staff not within the football department, so I challenge the fact that there's lots and lots of staff recruitment. So the fact that we got to the level we've got to this point in the League Cup means we've not had to make those cuts that we'd planned to do to deliver the break-even budget. Most of the commercial deals are up at the end of this season rather than the end of last season, so we've achieved record numbers in the kit sponsorship, so that's a positive. I think that the Bright Care have given us a record number for the kit. I think there's more on the kit this season than there has been previously in any other previous season. Hospitality, we're no worse off this season than we were last season, but I think we've acknowledged we perhaps got the pricing wrong, so we're looking to fix that. What else have I not covered, sorry, from your questions?
I think generally it was more around, so we took in that investment of, I think it was around about £1 million from Don McClyman and his colleagues. That was getting used for stadium. I mean, it was quite clearly set out that there was X amount getting set out for stadium repairs, there was X amount for cash reserves or whatever it was. Is all that money still there? Are we still in a good financial position? We've got all of that money set aside, we haven't eaten into it, we're not overspending it, and as long as we can increase the revenues, then we should be seeing an upside this season, whether that's on playing budget or whether that's just making sure that we've got a good sort of balance sheet to move forward from.
We spent about 100,000 on stadium repairs since the tranche 2 was brought in. So we fixed there was problems with the roof in the Wyre stand, so that's been fixed. We spent £25,000 on a new CCTV system that the police asked us to put in place, given some of the crowd disquiet that we've had in recent games. So there's 100,000 that's gone there. The rest of it, I think, we're in line with our budgets for this season. We did go over budget last season. I think we've admitted that and we've acknowledged that, and that was due to some late injuries and things like that happened at the end of last season. That's unfortunate, but it happened. But we budgeted for break even this season, which means we're, other than the shortfall last season, we're in line with what we said when we presented the tranche 2.
Can I just follow up? I've got another question for Grant then. What opportunities do you see from a brand and marketing point of view that's going to help us in that front?
A lot, which will become a lot clearer over the coming weeks and months, but to try and summarise, there is such a good story here and such a strong identity for this club that really hasn't been surfaced. I'm sure there will be a survey around the supporter base in the not too distant future, but I think if I spend some time with you afterwards and ask you what Partick Thistle, if someone landed from the moon tomorrow, what is Partick Thistle, and explain it to them, there might be a lot of different answers in the room. So if we can establish what that is, and then get on the front foot and getting out and telling those stories, and what that ultimately does, it brings more people towards us, want to be a part of it, for whatever reason that may be. Maybe the product on the park, it may be the match day experience, it may be something to do with our value system as a club. There are many, many reasons we've all come to support this football club. And then there's also the ongoing engagement with existing supporters like yourself, and ensuring that you keep coming back. And so we're doing that, and putting out content and storytelling, and actually having good marketing in place as well to continually push that and increase the revenue. So there are so many different opportunities around the club. Of course there are, and you don't need me to outline what they are. They're very, very basic, bums on seats or sponsors on shirts. But that identity piece, and then getting out on the front foot and saying and articulating what Partick Thistle is what will help us grow and set us apart from most other clubs on our doorstep.
Don't want to hold, but one last wee or two last wee points. Stadium repairs, Alan. If you've got any budget, can you stick a few more lights in those floodlights, because it's getting dingier by the passing week out there. And then I've got one last question just for Ian Barraclough, was just around, I think there was a specific strategy for, sorry Alan, I'll let you come in a second, a specific strategy around lowering the average age. Has that been achieved, and is there any intention to change that strategy in any way moving forward? So 2 questions, thanks. No more.
Okay, so the second one about the age, I'll pass over to Ian in a minute. In terms of the floodlights, we recognise the floodlights are getting duller and duller, and the lamps are obsolete. Very, very difficult to get replacement lamps. So we had a meeting last week with SFA looking at a project to replace our floodlights. And the SFA were very open to supporting us in that, and I mean financially supporting us. We've got a process to go through to apply for a grant. We still have to find somewhere in the region of £100,000, but if we find that, then we'll get new floodlights and we'll get some other improvements in the infrastructure. So we've got a meeting, in-house meeting on Tuesday to start the ball rolling in that application, and the SFA were pretty open that it should be a successful application based on what the criteria is for the grant one.
Yeah, when coming in April, I looked at the squad and looked at the average age, and it was just over 27. So the work that's been done in the summer, and the additions to the squad, and 1 or 2 that have departed, we're well on track with where we wanting to be. And we're currently around just over 23, between 23 and 24, which is the age when I sat down with Richard and 1 or 2 board members before taking the job. I said that would be that's the perfect average age of a squad that I would want to work with, and hopefully Mark's showing you that's it's a more dynamic squad. It's I think a better product than what we had last season. But it's just the start of it. We've had 1 window. January is a typically difficult window to work in, so you don't want to be doing too much work in there. But next summer we're building towards that already. So I think to keep the average age around 23, 24 is the optimum age.
Couple of questions. We get any people of criticising the media, the Partick media, to they're not very professional. So is there anything to improve the media? And the other thing is that on Sunday we're concerned about the disabled supporters, where they're allocated, and the safety on when playing against Celtic, and if any problems and on with fans on disabled people, and would work with the Disabled Supporters Association regarding not just Sunday, but if we were successful at the end of the season, and we will get promoted. Thank you.
Thank you. On media output and content output, I think quality of content can be a subjective matter, and I know there are opinions, and we see them, and the teams see them as well. What my role is to do is to establish a way of working and a framework that the content that is getting put out is laddering up to the bigger objectives of the club, getting more fans in, engaging you, and ultimately growing the revenues. And along that way, yes, there may be different content approaches, or other things may stay the same. So, as I said, it is a subjective matter. I think the comments on it are heard, but what we want to try and do is improve it the way we can. But that improvement looks like the point of what we do on that side of the business laddering up to the bigger picture. And there are a lot of ambition in the team and a lot of ideas in the team. And what I can bring to the table through my work with STV, with Motherwell, and with West Ham United just now is that broader world view of what works and what works to help this club grow.
In terms of the DSA and the match on Sunday, obviously the Jackie Husband being awarded to Celtic gave us an issue with the viewing platform at the Jackie Husband. That's been given over to Celtic, and I think they've filled it up for Sunday. Our own disabled supporters will be housed in the John Lambie and in the front of that, and in what was the enclosure area in the Colin Beer stand. So I think we've accommodated all the requests for that. The other issue we had was parking for blue badge holders, and I'm pleased to say that the requests we got for Partick Thistle fans have all been addressed. We've got a space for all of them in the McCarthy House car park across the road. We were unable to accommodate Celtic fans until just the other day when the safety officer gave us permission to house some of the blue badge Celtic fan holders in the canal area. So that will address at least some of their needs. We may not be able to address all of their needs, but we'll certainly address some of them. And Dougie McInnes is working with both sets of fans on that. Going forward, as I say, we'll come with another consultation at some point towards the end of the season, looking at what would our strategy be going forward for matches against the Old Firm. And when we get some feedback on that, we'll have a secondary strategy on disabled supporters.
Thanks. Alan, just coming back on that. Now, would it hoping be an option to put the Celtic fans who've got the disabilities in the Jackie Husband car park, or is that just for hospitality?
So for safety reasons, the safety officer has decided that no cars will be parked in the Jackie Husband car park, with the exception of police vehicles, Premier Sports compound, and the Celtic coaches. I don't mean the people coaches, the bus coaches. There'll be no other cars in the car park.
Hi, it's a question for Ian. Who's Lee Turnbull? I didn't hear an appointment in that. And just another one on that is what scouts have we got and where are they looking, basically?
So Lee is somebody that I've known for a number of years, several years. He's worked at Premier League level in England, Championship, League 1, League 2. He's a former player, former manager, so a lot of experience. And he was made head of recruitment not long after I joined, actually. He's somebody that I admire and has worked closely with at times. So when we were at Scunthorpe, he was heavily involved in bringing the likes of Billy Sharp, Andy Keogh, Gary Hooper, Martin Patterson, which brought in almost £2.5 million for Scunthorpe United. So, somebody with a track record, and somebody that, I think we're fortunate to have at the moment. And, I'm just waiting for a call to say that he's off somewhere else because he would be that sought after. But fortunately, he works for us at the moment, and he's doing a decent job. So yeah, we work very, very closely together. And him just on his own would be out at nigh on around 20 games a month, just stacking up the games, whether it's under 18s, under 21s. Games where we're targeting is generally the leagues north of England, National League North, the Northern Irish League, the Southern Irish League, League of Ireland, and obviously we've got scouts up in Scotland, one based in Aberdeen, one based in Edinburgh, one based in Glasgow, so a lot of knowledge there. We've got a guy based in Cambridge, so covers the south of England and the Midlands. Lee covers the north of England and the Midlands as well, and between us I think we cover the majority of the UK. I'm obviously still in touch with and still go back regularly to Ireland as well, so it's I think for very little money I think we cover quite a few areas, and hopefully that gets seen in the long run.
Anyone else with anything they'd like to ask before we wrap things up for tonight?
I was just wondering when our documentary's been released and how much dough we've made from it.
I believe that there are ongoing negotiations. They're looking for, I spoke to Donald McClymon about this in the week, so there are ongoing negotiations with the BBC, so the documentary makers want to secure a lead documentary provider in the UK, and then they will then look to sell it out into America to get to new markets. So that's what I was told when I asked that very question this week. So when it will be out, I don't know, is the short answer. It's worth saying just on that Donald McClymon funded that personally, so it came at no cost to the club, so we didn't spend any money on that. It was funded entirely personally by Donald McClymon with the view of, I guess, building the brand of Partick Thistle internationally.
Anyone else have anything you'd like?
And I'd like to ask the new finance secretary, Jackie, what's your like to what would you hope to? What's your ambition? What is your goal after that? What your goal is? What you're trying to get coach people and if you continue to work in the next few months, weeks and months, you find anything that you're happy or not happy with, how would you communicate with the fans to say that so that be transparent, but also that they don't get criticised and unhappiness or you're a bad person and all that, blah blah blah. But how would you communicate what any issues that come up while you're doing your role? Thank you.
Okay, that's a great question. I am probably anticipating that there will be a lot of criticism, but what I can guarantee is that I will always do my absolute best for the fan. I'm not a Partick Thistle fan, but what I do know is about finances. My initial plan is to get in, look at the controls, get stuck in from the bottom up. I will be looking at can we think of ways to increase the revenue. I think that the team's already been thinking things like that anyway from our board meeting tonight. I'll be looking at every cost line of expenditure, salaries, getting into, I'll be trying to look at KPIs that we can have kind of measurable impact, so we can look at the revenue, we're looking at kind of KPIs in terms of our gross profit margins and all the kind of hospitality things and all that. Literally, I will be getting into every single detail. I am one of these nosy people that just like to put my nose into everything. And in terms of your question on how will I communicate with fans, I'm kind of anticipating an open door policy. I don't know how I feel about that, but I any questions that you have to ask, I am happy to answer. I might not always know the answer, but I'm happy to tell you that as well. But what I can guarantee is that I expect to do the very best for this club.
If that's everyone, I'd just like to say thank you for everybody for coming along tonight on a Thursday night, and also if you could join me in thanking the board and Ian for taking the time to answer questions.
Can I just add that you've probably noticed it's been filmed, so the plan is to get this out on social media channels on the website, but it may take us a couple of weeks to get it all sorted, because there's a lot going on with the Celtic game in the next, well, obviously on Sunday, and I think there's some staff on holiday because they've been working hard to get ready for Celtic, so this will be out, but it might not be out tomorrow kind of thing, so please bear with us and be patient, but we will get this out there as soon as we can. Just like to echo what Norman said, thanks for coming along and supporting Partick Thistle.